Good evening and welcome to Fireside Chat number 51. It's our special one. It's the last one of the year. We are taking a small break after this one as well and giving you a break as well. So yeah, I am Mash and I'm here with Sandro and Jose. We are founders of Codurance. The Fireside Chats as a concept came about because we often talk about all sorts of things. So if you're new to this, it's basically us voicing our opinions on topics that are very relevant to us as managing directors for Codurance, but also for the software development and software industry in general. So we thought, well, why don't we record these? Because I'm sure other people would like to hear what we are saying, and also it'll be good to hear from others as well. So with that, we stream this live every Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock UK time. And you're welcome to join. You can join on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter. And particularly on YouTube, you can leave comments on all of them, but particularly on YouTube, we can actually reply back directly to you as well. So yeah, let's introduce the topic. We actually had the topic suggestion from Marina on Twitter, and she asked us to talk about how to create a successful feedback culture and do performance reviews. The idea being that we are nearing the end of the year, the new year, or we are looking forward to the new year, but also we are retrospecting. And often this time is the season for salary and performance reviews as well, because generally companies end their financial cycles often at the end of the year. So they do a lot of reviews. They combine that with salary and performance reviews as well. So it's quite a apt topic. Is quite suitable for this time. So we thought, well, why not? We've been doing our reviews as well. So why not talk about that a bit more? So who wants to start? How do you create a successful feedback culture?
Jose, you start.
Okay, so I would start with what do we mean by successful feedback culture, right? uh, because for me, a few things that make it successful. No, I'll go first for the success part. Uh, is you get this feedback that allows you to grow and to improve, yeah, either individually or as a team or as a company even, right? And that's sadly not the case, yeah. Many times, like, people confuse that constructive feedback with just venting, no, or moaning or whatever, right? So for me, there's a component of really helping to grow the person, etc., not just saying things because you want to get it out of your chest, yeah. And then the other aspect of it, I would say, is that it actually gets acted on, yeah. So it's not only a way for people to receive that, etc., but also people act on it and really improve, which is the other part. And now I go into the cultural aspect, right? And for me, creating a successful culture is a culture where those behaviors, or the behaviors that are associated with this kind of stuff, are happening all the time. People actually live those things, and I would say they their behaviors represent this kind of values around transparency and helping people grow, and providing really, creating an environment where that can thrive, you know? So that would be my definition of what a successful feedback culture looks like. What do you guys think? Let's start there, because we may have some.
Well, so I wonder if we had some similar conversations in the past. But on, I agree with your definition. I agree, like, with the culture. So I don't think that anyone would say no, we should not have a feedback culture. right? I think that everyone normally would say, yes, we should have a great feedback culture. Everyone wants to have feedback. But when we get to implementing that, is where, when you go to the details of how to create that, is where things normally don't go so well. And we tried like many times. I think that it's difficult to say like, do we have a feedback culture? It depends with whom. I think that is more like, there is one thing that is systemic, and there are something that is a bit more on an organic way. For example, some people will feel far more comfortable to give feedback or to receive feedback, others not so much. So there are, in the systemic ones, normally they tend to be a bit more transactional as well. For example, when people have a systemic way to do feedback, is because they have a review or a salary or performance review or salary review. So although I agree with that a healthy feedback culture is important, I normally struggle with the actual implementation and how people are comfortable in providing and receiving feedback. So
To backtrack a little, I'd like to go back to the reasons as well, by the way, because I think, Jose, you took a very individual perspective, and it's often the perspective that gets taken. But having done feedback and performance reviews for our senior management team, what was, at least when Sandro and I did that together, at least for me, what was at the actually more important, even, of course, want the people to grow. I want the people to be, to understand how things went and expectations alignment and all these kind of things. And they are a good benefit, but that wasn't the exact reason. The main reason is what we are looking forward to for the company next year. And there are certain ways that things happen. So it wasn't, I mean, of course, individuals all have contribution to them, and we did the individual feedbacks. But actually, what we were looking at more so was moving forward. Moving forward, what are the things that we want our people, individuals and as a team, to be prioritizing? What are the lessons that we want to take forward, and not repeat some of the mistakes that we made this year? So it was more a forward looking, but in order to look forward, you have to understand where you are. And that feedback, to me, that was like a primary reason for the review cycles. And secondary is, of course, all the individuals need to be, they need to understand how everyone else thought, and that we can talk about that and how we collated that kind of thing, those feedback from the rest of the companies as well as ourselves. But I think that's an important part to add, is that you don't do these kind of feedbacks and reviews just looking back at individual development. Often they are, or actually primarily they are a mechanism for us to improve as a team, as an organization.
So this is I'm even asking now Marina, because I know that she's on the chat, like if there is any perspective she'd like us to cover, because like one thing that I struggle with this topic is because it's so broad. So for example, we might be thinking, so in two sides, like there is the person giving the feedback and the person receiving the feedback. Yeah. So what do they want the feedback for? Right. So when you are providing the feedback, what is your intention with the feedback? What is your intention in providing that feedback? And when you are receiving the feedback, what is your intention in receiving the feedback? Also, did you ask for the feedback yourself? Or is that a process where people are forced, not forced, but like people are asked to
The
give you
feedback will find
feedback?
you.
Right? Because like for me, like all of those things are very different, right? So I might give feedback to people for different reasons, or if it's part of a process. For example, what I can give feedback to people as part of a process. There is a review or a performance or salary review or whatever, and I was asked to give feedback about someone. So I didn't volunteer that I was asked, and I will contribute and I'll give my perspective. Another thing completely different is when I by my own initiative, I decide to go to someone and provide them a feedback, which are very different things. And I'm in the latter case, I might have different reasons for providing a feedback when it was not asked. Yeah. So, and no, there is the third case is the person asked me directly, right? So there is a part of a process in the company where I'm asked to give feedback from someone, and that, in my opinion, will be used to to measure the person's performance or salary or whatever. This is scenario that is a systemic kind of process. Another one that I volunteered, I went to someone and gave the feedback. And then there is a scenario when someone came directly to me and say, hey, I would like your feedback in this thing I've done. So those are for me very different scenarios. And the receiving person is almost the same. I receive feedback through a mechanism from the company, or because someone just came to me and gave me feedback out of the blue, or I actually deliberately went and asked for feedback from someone. So for me, those three things are completely different. I don't know what you guys think. I don't want to expand too much or take more time.
Okay, so I understand, yeah, but we've actually done something in the past, I think, around feedback as well, and I think it would be good to stick to the cultural aspect of this stuff that we're talking about, and I'll explain a bit, elaborate a bit more, right? When I think about culture, I use this definition of like a chain model of the iceberg kind of thing, right? You have at the tip of the thing, you have the artifacts. These are the things that people can see around about the culture, things like performance reviews, yeah, or no, like those active instruments, no, that you have, or post-its on the wall, or whatever it is that people are using, no. Then you have the values, or the spouse values, yeah. And then you have the unchallenged assumptions, or the limiting beliefs, no, or the beliefs that the organization has about how it's supposed to work, right? And all these things that you're mentioning, for me, they're talking to different points in that, not structure, but the those elements of culture, right? When you're talking about performance, or when you're talking about um, uh, surveys or whatever, those are all those are artifacts, right? Or processes put in place. Those are the top thing, right? When you talk about we value transparency, we value growth, etc., you should this kind of stuff, you are then in the middle layer. And then at the bottom, yeah, you have things like, oh no, you shouldn't give feedback to your boss, right? Or you don't give feedback in front of other people, or whatever, right? That are not necessarily things that people talk about, but those are acquired behaviors that people have, including things like, I should ask for feedback, right? It's good for me to ask for feedback when I do this thing, because it's the way to grow and so on, right? And depending on where you are, right? It's easier if people have those beliefs already ingrained. Now, if someone comes to you and asks for feedback genuinely, yeah, no, they're not asking for a pat in the back. Yeah, they're asking for feedback because they want to improve, etc. You kind of got into the deepest level of that culture, yeah, than if you force the feedback through some kind of mechanism, not the organizational level, right? So I guess a big challenge there is, how do you get those things ingrained into the deepest levels of the organization or the group, or individuals in general, right? And how do you affect that change, no, that you're looking for? Because yes, you can start at the artifacts, but we all know that you can have performance review that are worth nothing, right?
Mhm.
um, it's an instrument, no, it's a little bit like a spoon. You can use a spoon to, depends on
The
the intention that you're using it with. No, you can use a spoon to eat dessert, but you can also use it to poke someone else's eye. No, it's a bit like you can misuse it, right?
Mhm.
So what do you think, Matt?
um, I, speaking about, I think it's a good thing to start off with, that where it's quite a common thing where people ask for feedback frequently of each other and even their their managers, and even managers asking feedback from other people, right? The problem here is that we had this where there's a lot of we used to do our performance reviews purely based on peer feedback. And although we thought we created a good atmosphere where people could share these things, and the importance of providing good quality feedback, it more often than not turns into a bit for a political exercise. You know, it's you have peers who are at the ready to kind of pat their peers in the back, because they know that if I do that, then I will also get patted in the back, right? You have peers that are often thinking about, they're not thinking less about team goals and how people are contributing to those team goals, but rather social kudos and social things, right? You get people who are speaking to their line manager and telling them what they want to hear. So you get a lot of this kind of dynamics, which are, I mean, it's just human nature, you know. And often what happens is that the actual constructive aspects of feedback start getting drowned out. You know, there's too much of backpatting going on for that one thing someone said about, you know, you're not doing this thing well. You know what I mean?
So this is the challenges. I was asking Marina, and Salva also wrote a few things in there, like what we want feedback for, because like this distinction is very important. Sometimes people just want reassurance. They don't really want feedback. They want reassurance. They want just someone to come in and say, hey, you are doing really good job. And they would be very disappointed when someone says, in fact, now that you are asking, or so I think there are many areas that you should improve, and here are a few examples. And then some people don't take that well. And so for me, like most people, when you ask them, like, why do you want feedback? The most common answer is because I want to improve. I want to know if I'm doing a good job. I want to know if I'm aligned. But there is also an expectation that that feedback is positive. So they want the feedback to improve, but they want that to be, no, you are doing already a great job. Maybe you do this, you could improve a bit, but it's still on the positive side, you know, like, no, you're doing everything good, but this bit in here, you could just keep doing that and evolve. Uh, but they not always are expecting to say, look, I don't think that you're having a good performance. Or, for example, maybe the way that you are interacting with the teams is not ideal, or you dropped that ball the other day, and I think that you didn't behave well after you did that, and so on and so forth. Some people don't expect that because they have an expectation. Everyone thinks, most people will think that they are doing a good job, right? And they expect the feedback to match their expectation. So then there is like the challenge of receiving the feedback, but an even bigger challenge is to give that feedback. Because most people, when we have a discussion about feedback, the vast majority of the people will put themselves in the position of the person receiving the feedback. Everyone wants to say, hey, I want feedback. I want more people to give me feedback so I improve. But very rarely they put themselves in a position of the person giving the feedback, because this is really difficult. To go to someone and really say what you think about what they do is not an easy thing to do. And they themselves, they say, look, I want feedback more often. I want more people to come to me and give feedback. And I say, like, how often do you go to someone and give the feedback? And then that's where the excuses start. No, but I don't have the time to give feedback to everyone, or I don't feel comfortable to give feedback to everyone. I'm not sure it's my place to give feedback to some people. but they feel that is everyone has the time to give them feedback, everyone feels comfortable to give them feedback, everyone is their place to give them. So this is where the mismatch is quite often, you know.
They actually, Salva is saying constructive feedback for me is always positive, is the way that you can learn and grow. Actually, there's an important part in there because we often say positive and negative feedback, and that in itself, like, says, well, somehow positive feedback is superior to negative feedback. And I try not to use those words. I mean, there's not a great word for positive, but like something like encouraging, and negative to be constructive, right? But it's the feedback, if it's done, they are both there to provide. If the feedback is there to provide you with uh, encouragement, regardless of what kind it is, it's good, positive feedback. And I totally agree with Salva there. Coming to your point around people not having the time, wanting feedback themselves, but not having the time to give it to others. I sometimes I am a bit baffled on it's such a why people complain that they don't get feedback. Why? I mean, that in itself, I'm sure, like, if I go to everybody and say, why do you do your job, they don't say I do my job because then I get feedback, positive or negative, right? So why do people say I don't get feedback, right? Why do they complain? And I think there are many reasons behind that, but I think primarily, as you said, they're looking for validation, they're looking for encouragement, and those things themselves are not bad. So, but when people ask for, oh, I'm not getting enough feedback, they should qualify it a bit more. Are they looking for recognition? Are they looking for encouragement? uh, or are they truly looking for uh, feedback that allows them to course correct, to improve?
This is why this is an area that, for people that know me well, and you both know me well, know that I struggle with. I struggle with this topic because I cannot remember a single time in my career where I complained that I didn't receive feedback. So, because normally the way I perceive this, the feedback is valuable to me, right? So, for example, if I truly believe that I want feedback so that I can improve, that I can correct certain things, so then normally that feedback has value to me, and I take ownership of that. So every now and again, when I, even up until today, right? So when we go to a meeting or we conduct certain things, and I feel that I'm not entirely sure if I behaved well, if I made a good decision, or if I anyway did something that I probably shouldn't, if I'm in doubt, I will immediately ask the people that I trust, because not everyone is suitable to give you feedback about everything, right? So I'll go to for example, certain things, I'll go to both of you and say, look, guys, like, I did that. I'd like to know what you think, or how do you think I behaved in that meeting, or I dealt with that specific problem. Other things, I'll ask other people, because you will not be you don't have the context or even the skills to give me feedback on something else. But I will always take that responsibility when I'm thinking about, I want the feedback so that I improve. I will take the lead. And very rarely you find people saying, because a different problem is to say, like, I've been asking for feedback for a long time and I don't get. That's a very different problem. But most people don't even ask for the feedback, but complain that they don't get. And they never give feedback either. And this is, for me, what's the challenges of creating a culture of feedback, when everyone is just expecting to receive feedback all the time, but not giving.
Okay, but going to by the way, I agree. You can qualify better what kind of feedback, and it's, let's say, if you want to start creating a successful culture of feedback, start by encouraging people to ask for feedback themselves. Yeah, forget
And
about
ask for
training people on
constructive.
how to. No, that comes later, right? Like teaching people how to provide good feedback. That's another skill, right? But if you want to really focus on something, focus on people asking for feedback, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the first thing. But because you can always filter, right? So if you're asking for feedback and someone gives you crappy feedback because they don't know how to be better, how to do better feedback, you can still guide them, right? It's like, oh, I think it was shit. Okay, why? What part? Like how would you have done it differently? What is it that you can still kind of guide them if you are really interested in what they have to say, right? um but if you don't go and ask and someone comes to you and says, oh, this was crap, no, then you're gonna have a
Or even
problem.
even worse, they say, I've got some feedback to give you.
Exactly. Exactly. No, so that's point number one. However, how do you encourage that, right? And this is something that I feel is interesting because, again, we there's two aspects that you mentioned there, Sandro, that I personally use. One is I ask for feedback a lot, not only from you guys, but also the people that I work with, clients, you know everyone, and people can attest to this, right? Then what does again, I do want to know. Doesn't mean that I'm going to act on the feedback, doesn't mean that I agree with the feedback, whatever, but I do make a point of you know listening to it and try to find what I do want to take from that. No, the second thing is the list of the people that you will listen to, because this is another thing. You can't just be guiding your life completely based on what other people think, no, which is kind of what do you think about it? Yeah, it's terrible. Oh, you feel terrible. No, it's kind of like you can't really do that, right? So building up that list of people that you would listen to, either because you respect them and respect their opinion, or because that they will tell you, they'll be transparent, and they don't there's no they will tell you like it is, so to speak, no, or because they know about a subject that a lot of, or because that they're good at giving feedback, whatever it is your criteria is, whatever it is that your criteria is, no. um Having that list, I think, is helpful, because when you start hearing in the background, no, it's like, oh, this is coming up over and over, no, or you have doubts, maybe I shouldn't have done this or whatever, then you can go to that list and say, okay, let me go and check, no, and you can use that. So those
Th-
are
th-
quite
This is the
interesting.
thing. It's like Marina, you were asking like what if how about those who are looking for professional growth only? I don't know if sorry, because I cannot keep track of the entire chat all at the time, but like so there is a difference in asking for feedback and asking for advice. Those are also not the same thing. Yeah. So feedback for me is like about a thing that I've done. Yeah. So I've done something or I've been doing something, and I want to know what someone thinks about that. And I normally might have a reason for that, right? So I want one reason might be I want just to improve. I just want general feedback, or maybe I want to make sure that whatever I do, I think that someone in the chat, I don't know if it was Marina or someone else, mentioned is like, or Salva, I don't remember now, but like is aligned in your work. So for example, the work that I'm doing, I'm putting so much effort into my work. Is it aligned to what is expected? Because this misalignment is quite hurtful, painful to everyone. Because like you put a lot of work, think that you're doing a great job, but it doesn't meet someone else's expectation. So that feedback loop is important. So there is a feedback in, hey, what I'm doing, is it according to your expectation or the company's expectation, the team's expectation? That is one type of feedback. Another thing is like, look, is this like good enough what I'm doing? Is aligned, but is it I want to improve. What else can I do better? That's a different type of feedback. Yeah. So you are asking for feedback to improve the ways you work. For professional growth, That for me is now moving away from feedback to advice. So for example, there might be some people in the company that I would like to follow the footsteps of that person or the career ladder that that person took. So some people will be better placed than others to give you that advice. So I normally, what I do is when I think about my personal growth, my career progression, I look at people that are a bit far away or further away from where I am now in the direction that I want to go. And then when I go there, I ask for advice. So that's a different conversation. Look, this is how I'm leading my career. This is the kind of work that I do. This is the job that I have. I would like to do this in the future. What can you advise me? And that's a very, very different also kind of conversation,
But
right?
I think feedback can also lead to growth, right?
No, it
Because
can lead, but it's more the feedback is normally on something that you've done,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it is,
Mhm.
but I think what Marine said was that if I'm looking for professional growth and I want feedback, so for example, I present something and I ask people maybe even more senior than me who are in the presentation listening to say, okay, you have a bit more experience. I would like to understand the things that I did well, the things that I didn't well, those kind of things. So that still leads to professional growth, and it is feedback. I mean, it's like there is almost a bit for I understand what you mean, like when you're asking for advice for your future and how to behave in future ways, that's advice. But the feedback could be related to the future growth as well, because you expect you're trying to improve on the things that you're already doing.
One thing that I think Emmanuel was mentioning in the chat is that he thinks that criticism and feedback are not exactly the same thing, and I kind of disagree because and also there was someone Salva was saying it's difficult for me when people ask me for feedback and they're not specific. Again, it's kind of disagree because the first thing when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I want you to give me feedback," is okay. What do you want feedback on? No, is it about the presentation? Is it about the work that you did? Whatever, right? And then again, you can also help them even if they're not clear about what they're asking. You can help them or guide them towards something that you will be able to be constructive about, or you will be able to actually, provide something that is useful to them. No, on the other side, when it's a criticism, that also tells you things, no, and you can go and scratch the surface of that and try to understand what is happening there, right? And there's another aspect we haven't touched on, which is who you are receiving feedback from can also, because the same feedback coming from someone that you don't have a problem with no,
Right.
or an animosity with, you can completely digest it as, oh really, oh, no problem. But if you have a bad relationship and someone is trying to you, or somehow your boss is giving you feedback, or an employee is giving you whatever it is that you, whatever relationship it is, that also kind of taints uh, how you perceive that feedback independently of what they are saying. Now who is saying it is also changing that, right? So sometimes you can interpret feedback as a criticism because of the of that relationship, no, or that thing. But it is on you to kind of like scratch the surface and get the stuff out. And it may be that you start unpacking and there's nothing there, right? It is just really, this is how this person is feeling and they're sharing it with me. Okay, great. You decide whether you want to use that or not.
Yeah,
But I feel like it does, there's no bad feedback, you know what I mean? Even if people don't know how to give you feedback, you can still make,
I think
make the most.
I mean, we can actually talk about receiving feedback. We talk about asking for feedback, but feedback is not, especially constructive feedback, is not easy to take, and you have to really practice and grow those calluses, because who likes being told that they're not doing a job well? It's not that you would like it, and I think it's important to manage those feelings. In my personal view, the older I got, the better I got at receiving feedback. When I was younger, I had an ego and a half, and I still get told by people how difficult a person I was to get constructive feedback, because I just simply didn't believe it. I didn't want it, and part of it is ego, but part of it is because the skill wasn't there to to get that, to kind of take it on. You often, well, at least in my when I in my younger days, you just threw it back at the person in the sense of what do you know type thing, right? And but because often they were not developers who were my managers, right? And there's always that thing as well, right? And uh, but like looking back in it, part of it is actually to do with, are you ready? Was I ready to receive, to understand even some aspects of what they were trying to tell me? And I think one is sensitivity, is that you have to grow those calluses and bring them in and try to take the emotion out of it, because the emotion is there, and yes, it is the responsibility of the person providing the feedback as well to be as gentle as they can without losing the message, right?
Mhm.
Sorry, go on, Sandro.
No, no, sorry, Mesh. Yeah, I don't know if you are finished or not.
No, I was just going to say that to be as gentle without losing the message, but on the other end, you also have to grow the calluses so that you're creating a bit of an emotional distance, a professional distance. To say this thing is coming at me, it's the thing I did, and this will help me improve. I know that this is how that person thinks, but that should be the secondary. The primary should be an objective view on what they are trying to tell me.
Yeah, because like this is for me, like this is the other end. As I said, most every time that, the discussions around feedback, most people will put themselves in the place of the person that wants to receive feedback. Very few people would put themselves in the place of the person that wants to give feedback. Yeah. So in the scenario that you were describing, Mash, like for me, let's say there is the normal process where you are asked by the company to give feedback from someone. I don't want to discuss that one. Yeah. I want to discuss when you decide to give feedback to someone without being asked. Yeah. So this is a very difficult scenario, right? Everyone wants that to happen to them, some people to come randomly and give them feedback. But think about you going out of the blue and giving someone a feedback. So in that scenario, normally when you decide to do that, which is already not an easy thing, a natural thing to do, because if you are doing that, very rarely you go there with an intention to give them kudos, because kudos is easy. Kudos, everyone feels, oh, I want to go there and give kudos for this person doing a good job. Yeah. When you want to give feedback to someone out of the blue, normally you have a problem in mind that you want to resolve. That's why you are giving that feedback. One might be you are friends. Yeah. So one scenario that I can think of, let's say the three of us, we have a friendship relationship, not only a working relationship. Yeah. So quite often, sometimes you want to give feedback to someone more on a friendly, say, hey, you know what, mate, like the way that you behave in there, like try to be careful about the words that you use or how you tackle that problem. Maybe you came too strong, or something like that, right? So, but you come in and more like really helping the person. You don't have anything to gain from it. This is really important. When you're giving some feedback to someone, are you giving that in a friendly manner where giving that feedback doesn't bring you any benefit? It's purely about the other person. That is one scenario. The other scenario is where when you give the feedback is because you also benefit from that situation. So for example, you are a team lead and one of the team members, it's, I don't know, the way that this team member is behaving is creating some people, other team members are a bit uncomfortable, right? So then giving that feedback to the team member is not only about making that person aware of a behavior that needs to be improved, but also benefiting from that improvement. So the team benefiting from that change. And this is what normally happens when you give, you do performance reviews, salary reviews, or even like a more, I wouldn't say top down, but like you are responsible for something and you need to go to someone and tell them something. Then it's because that behavior, whatever that might be, is creating an issue, and you want that behavior fixed so that everyone grows. And those situations are very, very different because the friendly one is easy. So look, like you are my friend. I'm just trying to look after you here. You do whatever you want with this behavior. This is another thing. When you give a feedback to someone and you are just purely focused on the well-being of that person, you don't need to force that feedback. You don't need to force the acceptance of that feedback. So look, I have your best interest at mind. I just wanted to share with you what I think about what you're doing. But ultimately, it's up to you to do whatever. Yeah. Another thing is to say, look, I'm your boss. I'm the team lead, or I'm the whatever. I need that fixed because otherwise our relationship is not going to work. And that's a very different relationship. Sorry, I
I
already.
think this is a very good point to talk about performance reviews and salary reviews and their relationship with feedback, right? So, should the so performance, one of the things that we always used to talk about was that when we were trying to get this thing right, where we basically were basing kind of doing peer reviews, and we felt that actually, in order to even the salaries should be reviewed by peers, right? And we went through that, and one thing that happened was the first kind of problem that we hit there was that when peers are providing each other feedback and doing performance reviews, when salary was involved, they were always very generous to each other about the review because the salary is involved, and they don't want to be the person, the Scrooge, that is, impacting their peers' salary. Now, and we always try to say to them, well, let's try to take the emotion out of it, and we even try to kind of provide two separate types of reviews: the kind of the general feedback on getting better and the performance salary thing. So my question is, should you be uh, attaching performance review to feedbacks, or is there a way to detach it even?
The way I address it, I separate those two. This is what I'm saying. Like the one thing is, if I really just want to focus on improvement and getting better in alignment, I think that the person that wants the feedback, they should take charge. They should decide where they go to ask for feedback so that they can improve. They should not be waiting or complaining because they don't get feedback from someone, because they themselves don't go out giving feedback to everyone either, right? So, but when it comes to salary reviews or performance reviews, that is not a feedback anymore. That's an evaluation. So this is also for me is just distinct. So sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm getting feedback during my performance review." No, you are not getting feedback. You might also get feedback, but the focus of that conversation is an evaluation of your performance, right? And that is done. You can ask for feedback from other people. So like, hey, how do you think that this person is doing? And even that feedback could also be considered an evaluation, because when you ask people, hey, can you tell me how this other person is doing? Because we have a performance review. They're not giving feedback. They're actually giving their evaluation, right? So
You can then say that any feedback is an evaluation, like
sort of.
whether it
No,
has an impact in your salary
It's
or
a
not.
perspective,
That's
isn't
it.
it? It's an
Exactly.
evaluation from a perspective.
I can understand. Yes, you could say the same
I could say
because
that is tainted. Let's say the feedback is tainted. Let's say the consequences are much higher, no, than
it's not only that. But it's not only that, because I understand that, like, maybe if you just look, I would not be able to give you the dictionary definition of each one of those words. Yeah, but I probably can try to explain what I mean by that. I think that when you give feedback, the person giving feedback or even receiving should not have any consequences, right? So it's basically like, look, I want to share this with you. And it's up to you if you want to act on that. Or look, I want to know your opinion, but it's also up to me what I'm going to do with that information.
But
And
it's
that is
also, but it is also always up to the person. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you come to me as a team leader, or whatever, and say, "Hey, there's a problem here. We really need to fix this," or basically, there, you are making it explicit that there could be consequences if things don't improve, right? But you are still within your right to apply that or not, and many people don't. You know what I mean? And
no,
that's
no,
why
sure. So
things
sure,
things escalate from there.
sure.
But
But for
that's
example,
what I
at
mean.
that point, you don't have a consequence. But when you get to the actual performance review or salary review, in that instance, now it has consequences. It now is a pure evaluation. The feedback was given before. I said, look, throughout the year or throughout the quarter or whatever, I've been giving you feedback of areas that you would need to improve or areas that had to be changed. And at that point, I was giving you the chance because there was no immediate consequences. I was giving you advice and feedback and stuff so that you could act on it because there will be a point where there will be an evaluation. And at that point, it has consequences because we are going to measure your performance. And that is not feedback. That is an evaluation with consequences. The other
Yeah.
ones are I'm giving you information and feedback and advice in how to improve.
Okay, I understand the sentiment. Yeah, there's not necessarily agree, but I understand what you mean. Uriah is bringing up a question, which is okay, but the question was how to foster feedback, and I wanted to bring in another topic as well, which is radical candor, right? Or giving feedback and saying to people, you know, without any filter, let's put it like this, no, or being very explicit on what you're saying, or rough or whatever, versus um other approach where you kind of sugarcoat it a bit more, or maybe are not as direct with what you're saying, and so on, right? And I'll start
It's
with my
well, Yare, but just a quick one. Yare should know he lives in Holland. They are they're a bit too good at radical candor.
No, I think again there's a couple of things here, right? Like radical candor. Some people take it better than others. Right? Some people actually seek it out, no, and some people are better at delivering without filter. Just being very direct with what they want to say, no. Um, and that's fine. We all take feedback differently, etc., etc. But you do need to think about why it is that you're doing it, and you do need to think that even if that's the preferred way that you like to give feedback, you still need to master giving it differently because there are also consequences to how you deliver feedback. No, so on one side is, am I doing this because for lack of a better word, no, I'm a jerk, right? And I just blurt things out. I don't care about the other, if the other person's gonna feel bad about this or not. Yeah, which goes a bit beyond, helping them grow and that kind of stuff. I just saying whatever, no. And the other thing is, if I am choosing this method of delivery, right? What are the consequences of that? Because it's not the same, me going to my manager, and using radical candor, no, and just birthing out whatever it is that I want. And this is where I also feel like the power imbalance is quite important, because there are consequences in many areas. This is why people may choose not to give you feedback, no, because there will be a repercussion. They're not too confident that they can deliver that feedback in an appropriate way, right? So all of those things I think that are also a play if you're trying to create a culture a successful feedback culture, no, creating that space where people feel like they can give the feedback independently of which position they're playing and so on, right? So that's one aspect. And second, building up the skill so that even if people have a preference, no, on a style of receiving feedback or giving feedback, they can still tune the message so that they, well, the means, no, in order for the message to arrive properly.
Safely.
Yeah.
For the message, one thing I would say this is that, especially when it comes to receiving feedback, you can't simply learn to receive different kind of feedback. Certain cultures, it's a big no-no to have a very direct criticism, let's say. Others, it's actually quite accepted. And when you are brought up in a particular way, regardless of how much you practice, and you can practice to get better at uh, receiving things in a certain way, but you can't change it. You're like, up to a certain point, your culture kind of shapes your brain. So this is like, I was actually not joking about the kind of the Dutch people, because I was in a team where they had to go through cultural training because they were basically peeving every single English person in their vicinity, to the point where, it was really hurting their company. And but but to come back to the reason I'm saying all this is that I think you were saying a bit of that as well, is that it's easier to change your delivery according to how you think it should be perceived than to apply a kind of delivery and just say everyone else should just learn to deal with it.
To deal with it, yeah.
There is
Feedback
an
culture, no,
element.
you just tell it
Yeah.
like it is. No,
But there
or
is an
maybe not.
element of trust as well. Like, for example, even if we take like the three of us, right? So we are not only colleagues at work, but we are also friends. And every now and again, we have our own heated debates and stuff. So there are, for example, if one of you uh, comes at me blazing, shouting at me as, "Hey, I think you screwed up," and blah 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 blah, I will listen, right? I will take that. I will ignore how you spoke to me. I will be focused on what you are saying, because it doesn't matter how you are speaking to me, because we have enough trust that you might be a bit pissed off or whatever, but I would ignore that. Like, so I'll just like this, yeah, whatever,
And
right?
informality, it's almost like informality, you kind of, it doesn't matter how you speak, because
Exactly.
yeah.
So because like I know that you're just pissed off, but we're gonna have a beer afterwards, and that's okay, right? So, but I will focus on what you were trying to say. Yeah, I might even answer at the same tone, but like it doesn't matter. We will resolve it. We are open to resolve it. But you need to have because I'm trying to get back to the how do you put that? Was a candor,
Radical
Radical
candor.
candor.
radical candor or
Yeah.
stuff. So
It's a book.
right. So I think that we are far more open when we have a relationship of trust. For example, you know that regardless of how the person spoke to you, you know that the person doesn't want to cause you harm, right? They might be pissed off, they might, but they don't want anything bad for you. They just want, we are on the, you have enough trust to know that we are on the same page, we want the same thing, and stuff. Yeah. But that would not be true with someone that doesn't have the degree of trust. If someone comes to you and says something to you, but you don't have that degree of trust or relationship, you don't care what the person is saying. You care how they said it, and you're going to react accordingly, right? So, and this is for me is also very important. So, as I think the reason I'm saying that, because Mesh, I thought that it was quite insightful in terms of like you cannot teach someone how to receive feedback. This is where I was coming from, because like you receive feedback according to who's giving feedback to you, right? There's an emotional reaction almost.
Mhm.
But you can teach how you give feedback. So then people are more aware, regardless of the degree of friendship or trust you have, you can still put a feedback across that the degree of trust is less relevant because you are putting
Yeah.
that more mildly, in a way.
Or you can tailor it even. You know how to tailor it. Some people, I can say this and they will hear it. They won't worry about how I'm saying it. Others, I need to beat around the bush quite a bit.
Mhm.
They will get it eventually because but I do need to be gentle about it, right? So you just have to know your audience, and that's a communication skill. It's the same skill that applies to many other conversation types, right? Not just feedback.
Yeah. So Girai, what you were saying, like Girai, you were saying like, okay, but as a company, how do we foster feedback to have it flow? Because I was asking Girai, like for example, what do you mean like fostering feedback? Is it giving feedback, receiving feedback, or both? Or even asking for it? And then he said like just to let it flow. The thing that I struggle, Girai, and this is also for you, Mash and Jose, when you talk about creating a feedback culture. I normally find it very artificial when you create mechanisms for people to give feedback to others. Right? All the efforts that we had where, okay, we're going to have a round of feedback, we're going to have a one-to-ones, or every 2 weeks, or like when you do peer reviews, we collect feedback from different people. All of those mechanisms, I don't find them natural, right? Because like you are always creating a system for people to give feedback when they don't want to give the feedback, right? They are being asked to give a feedback or being forced to go to certain meetings. For me, like I would rather to be in a place where the company doesn't need to do anything. It's more like I would encourage people to ask for the feedback, which is different, right? So then, for example, I would like to be in a place where we have enough I don't like to use terms like psychological safety because I don't want to simplify a complex problem, right? I normally when we use those terms you banalize the whole thing, but I want to create a space where I feel comfortable to go to someone and ask for the feedback. Yeah. So that for me, but then you need to go and ask. You cannot just complain that you don't get, right? So, and if you don't feel comfortable to ask for the feedback for whatever reason, you need to escalate that. So, what are you? But for me, that culture is like it needs to come from the individual that wants the feedback, because otherwise, when someone needs to give a feedback, you are normally giving a feedback because you want to solve a problem. You are not just having the best interest of the person in mind. You are having your team best interest or your company best interest or your project best interest. And you are giving the feedback because you want to address a problem. You want that person to change, to solve a problem, not because you care about that person. And
Yeah,
that's the
but
dynamics.
yeah, but then again, you're kind of, I think, mixing both things, right? One is, why the reason why you get the feedback, and the reason why the organization acts in certain way to enable, that culture that we're talking about. And there's a couple of things. I have a couple of things to say here, right? One is, you said not do anything, and then immediately say encourage people to do. That is doing something. Yeah. So
Okay,
as
okay,
an
okay,
organization,
I'll take it.
there's
Yeah.
an aspect of encouraging people, and part of that is encouraging the leaders or the people that others identify with to do it, and basically demonstrate the behaviors that you want other people to show in the organization, because that's one of the ways that you shape culture, through identification with leaders, especially at points of crisis. Now, when things are, then how those leaders react, tells you a lot about how you should react, no, or how you should behave. No, so that's one aspect. So encouraging the leaders in the organization to do that, and for themselves to encourage other people to do it. That's one aspect. Yeah.
Sorry, but before
Then
you move to the other one, what is an example of it? For example, it's like the leader themselves, people in position of leadership, they go to people and ask for feedback. Is that what you were saying?
that's one example. Yeah.
Right.
So you asking for feedback when you finish a meeting and saying, hey, like, what do you think? Is there anything I can improve with this or whatever? Right. And that would be
I see a
that
bit.
would actually that
You can finish it, but I'd see a bit of a problem with that. But anyway, let's move on.
no, it's fine. I'm
Yeah.
saying this is one example, no,
Yes,
of how
yes.
you are doing that, and again, it doesn't have to be, at that point where you're trying to give feedback to change the behavior or the thing that you're trying to resolve. Yeah, at that point, maybe asking for feedback is not the best thing, although you could. Yeah, and then that person would tell you maybe how you went about it wrong, right? Like if you wanted
Give
to
your
deliver the
feedback on
message,
your feedback.
yeah, exactly. Give
You
feedback
can carry on
on the
forever.
no, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the first rule of feedback is no feedback on the feedback. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that's the first rule of feedback. But the idea there is basically you are showing that it is okay to ask for feedback and to give feedback independently of where you sit in the organization or what kind of responsibilities you have and so on. And that is something that people can emulate. Yeah. Also, how you behave to that feedback will send a message as well. So if you ask for feedback, you better be ready to shut up and listen, even if you don't like what you're gonna hear. Right? You can cry about it afterwards, but it is part of that. No. Then the second thing is about creating that environment of trust. Well, you said psychological safety or whatever. Like this in Patrick Lencioni's model, no, is about trust, and he explains it as vulnerability. Right? You need to show that people can be vulnerable. Yeah, and that starts with you. For instance, saying, "Hey, I screwed up. Yeah, I didn't do this well," and recognizing that, and it's okay. Let's see how we can learn. Please help me, improve on this. How should I have approached it differently, etc. Right? And showing that vulnerability would make it easier for others to show that they're also vulnerable. Right? And again, when people are vulnerable, you don't attack them. That's the whole point. Now, if someone opens up and say, "Oh, I screwed up," and they, "Oh, yes, I knew it," that's not. That's the fastest way to get the opposite reaction, right? But you do, you have that aspect. No, you're encouraging people by leading by example, and showing and how you react to the feedback that you are given is also a thing. No, and then creating that space. Now, how do you create that space? Because that sounds great. No, people will open up, and where it's you design the rules for that to happen, right? And you can say, hey, we're gonna have it's kind of like what it's done in a retrospective and this kind of thing, right? Like you set some boundaries, about how you want the team to behave or whatever, right? And everyone agrees to those, and then you start having conversations, and that's not going to happen from one day to the next, right? If people are not talking and they're not telling each other what the issues are, you don't expect, you put some post-its on the wall. That's not going to make it happen, right? What's going to make it happen is that people actually follow those rules, and then they start having smaller, less problematic conversations, yeah, that get addressed through those rules, and that's how the rules kind of build that safety. Yeah. And then you can start tackling other problems. Yeah. So that's kind of how you work on that. And in order to do that, you also give the team or the people that you're working with the tools in order for them to be able to communicate better. Yeah, these are things like nonviolent communication and this kind of stuff, right? Like they will allow them to say what they're feeling and kind of like give some shape, to how they are feeling about the thing, which normally comes up, tangled up with a bunch of things. How I'm feeling, what the critique was, and and the request, and you kind of give them certain tools to split that up and be able to communicate better, but also to understand the other person, kind of empathize with the other person, so that you can apply the rules to them. Oh, this is what they're saying, this is what, and if you allow that to happen, you give them the rules, you build the space and enforce that. And this is, for instance, what happens when you look at I call it AA, anonymous, alcoholics
Alcoholics
anonymous.
Alcoholics
Yeah.
Anonymous.
Anonymous.
and all these things that you see in the movies where everyone's sitting in a circle and then there's one person this is called holding the group, right? So basically you create that space where if someone is going out of the no and criticizing whatever, you kind of like, this is not what we do here, you should stop now, whatever, and that is already sending a message that it's not okay to behave in that way, etc., etc., right? If you just put the post-its on the wall and then don't really use it or whatever, that's not going to work. Yeah, but those are like the basic tools. Sometimes you don't need the tools because people already have this kind of common baseline of as I mentioned before in the culture, no, the assumptions, no, of how things should go, or the values that people discuss, right? And that gives you a very good base. But if you need to design it, right, those will be for me the basic steps to take.
Right. So I have a few. Maybe it's probably time.
Feedback. I have a few
let's do that as a final thoughts as well, because we're already quite a bit out. So let's do it as final thoughts.
Yeah. So I think that I'll do that as a final thought. I think that yes, there are things that we can do as an organization, but I normally would rely less on those mechanisms, and I would focus more on what I can do as an individual. For example, as an organization, as you mentioned, Jose, yes, the leaders of the organization, or any person, not the founders. I'm talking about all the way in.
Anyone in a leadership position, whether it is formal or informal. Yeah.
Everyone, right? So showing vulnerability, so asking for help, and stuff. So that is create, or also providing some tools. But again, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because you say, like, I don't want to say, hey, the whole company now should read nonviolent communication. We should actually say that, but that doesn't mean that they will, right? So, but so there is an element of what.
But we did put it in the foundational training, eh?
No, we put that in the
put them in the side.
Yeah, so,
it's not like it's not. There is some aspect of it.
So there is an element of, yes, I trust less company initiatives and formal cycles, because, for example, every time that you create a system where people are pushed to give feedback, the feedback that you get on those cycles are normally not the real feedback, because it's not natural. Well, I think for me, what always worked better, and now more as an individual than whatever the company was doing, is me taking charge. It's like, okay, I'm in doubt if what I'm doing is aligned with the company. So who are the people that can give me that information? I'm going to give that feedback. I'm going to ask for that feedback from one type of person. Or the way that I'm behaving in my project. Like, I would love to know if people feel that I'm contributing, or how can I improve? Who are the best people that to tell me what I could improve? The people that are right next to me. Is not the founder of the company. Is my colleague that works with me every single day. Those people are in a much better position to tell me what I can improve than someone that is not even in the project. If I want to ask for career progression within a company, then yes, that might be my line manager. That might be some people outside my project. But that is more an advice than anything else. Or if it's career in general, might not even be someone in the company. And I believe that in my career, I've been very good at understanding those things. So it's the feedback that I want is for me to grow, or to do better, or to align, or to evolve my career. And I was very good at understanding the difference of all those questions and what I want to do with this information, and actually go out and seek that advice or feedback, right? So I would encourage people to do that. But if they are asking for feedback and they're not getting, then yes, they should escalate, and the company should say, like, why this person is not getting the feedback.
And you could be looking for the feedback and getting,
So, but also be prepared. Like, every time you are asking for feedback, ask for feedback for someone that you trust, or when people say things, be open to whatever they're gonna say, right? So
also it's better to ask for specific rather than general. Like
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I personally, unless it's related to a particular recent thing, like you're coming out of a presentation and say, like, do you have any feedback for me? And you know that it's about the presentation, but then someone sits in general and says, do you have any feedback for me? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, in a
so
niche
like
area, like
exactly. So be more specific. But one thing we have to land soon. But one thing I would say is that yes, there is a definitely a individual responsibility and ask for feedback and to grow yourself and so on. But I do like feedback is a mechanism for an organization to improve, for individuals, but the organization as a whole to improve. And and I think companies should foster a culture of feedback, from the kind of things that Jose you were saying. Uh, it's about training, it's about helping, it's about helping people understand, but it's also about encouraging certain types of behaviors, whether that is through example or through the kind of conversations that you're having. But it is a useful mechanism within the organization to improve the organization as a whole. So I think it should be both, Sandro, like you're saying, individually ask for feedback, but I think companies should also work towards creating cultural in a cultural environment where feedback or a culture of feedback flourishes. I think that's it's important.
mm.
I agree.
Okay.
Should
So, yeah, final thoughts
I?
from you, Jose, and I'll ask Sandro because Sandro, I don't think you also final thoughts.
So final thoughts. Yeah. First rule of feedback: no feedback on the feedback.
Uh-huh.
That's very. If you ask for feedback, you just take it. If someone wants to give you feedback, just take it. Right. Maybe
Yes.
ask questions if you want to understand more, because sometimes it's not very clear. Right.
Yeah.
But no feedback on the feedback. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. Like, it takes away from, it actually puts the other person, let's say, or lets the other person know that you're getting defensive. Basically, that's being
Mm-hmm,
interpreted, right?
mm-hmm.
So you just shut up, take the feedback, and then maybe you can have a second conversation. Say, oh, by the way, you mentioned this thing or this thing or this thing, and I would like to give you some more context, whatever, right? So that's one. Second, if you're gonna work on something, work on encouraging people to give feedback. Start by leading with the example, no, um, and how you react to asking for feedback will also send a message. So ask for feedback and make sure that it's clear that you want that feedback and that everyone is welcome to provide it, right? And then you can work on training people to give feedback and all of these other things. And of course, in order to do that, also, don't go the radical candor kind of route. No, there are many ways that you can give feedback, and you should learn how to uh, tune your message,
Tailor it.
to
Yeah.
tailor your message, according to the person that's going to be receiving it, because that's also quite important. No? In the end, when you ask for feedback, or you're giving feedback, you are kind of looking for a change, in the behavior and so on. So it's in your best interest for that message to be as well received as possible, right? So learn the tools as well, and that will be it.
Thank you, Jose. Sandro, do you have any additional? No.
Own it, own it. Go after the feedback. Don't wait for anyone to give feedback. If it's for you, if it's for yourself to improve, learn who you should ask. Different people offer you different types of feedback, and not everyone's opinion is the same, or has the same weight. So be very smart when you go after for feedback. Understand really what you want, what you want to do with that feedback, and be very selective in who you ask as well. So, and at the same time, also, like, treat people how you wanted to be treated. If you want to receive a lot of feedback, ask yourself how often I'm giving the feedback, and don't give yourself excuses in why you are not giving feedback, because the other people can have the same excuse in why they're not giving you feedback. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Everything good? I think I would echo both of your comments. It's an important thing. It's a good thing to learn to give as well as to receive. So, this is the final. So I would say thank you very much for listening, especially to the people that participated in the live debate. If you like these conversations, subscribe, like, comment, and also suggest. I mean, today's topic was suggested by one of our listeners. So suggest new topics.
Marina
Savchenko, that's right, Marina Savchenko. And thank you very much for suggesting that topic. We enjoyed talking about it as well. So thank you very much. Everyone have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in the new year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm just replying to Marina. See you all.
Bye-bye.